The ruins were quiet, but the human soldier knew he was not alone. The broken city around him looked dead, with shattered walls and burned towers. The wind whistled through the empty streets, carrying dust and the smell of old fire. Still, under that silence, something moved. He paused, his boots crunching on the gravel. His hand rested on his weapon, eyes scanning every shadow. He had been trained to feel danger before it showed itself. And tonight, every part of him screamed that unseen eyes were watching him. The soldier turned sharply, aiming into the dark corner of a collapsed building. Nothing, only rubble and twisted metal. But the sound was clear, like a breath, soft and sharp. He frowned, his heart beating harder. He whispered to himself, "I know you're there." For hours he walked, and for hours he felt it. The same presence following him. Light footsteps that stopped when he stopped. A flicker of movement when he turned. But each time he searched, there was no one. The stalker was careful, silent, and patient. He was not afraid, but the mystery weighed on him. Who would follow him in a dead city where no life was supposed to remain? Bandits? A beast? Or something worse? The soldier had fought many enemies, but this was different. This was like a shadow playing games with his senses. At one point, he passed a broken statue, its alien face half buried in dirt. The eyes of the statue seemed to stare at him. But he felt another stare, alive, breathing, hiding somewhere near. The back of his neck prickled as he moved past. Every step echoed too loudly in the silence, reminding him that someone else walked silently in the dark. Night began to fall, painting the ruins in deep black. The soldier found an old campfire pit and decided to rest. But even then, he did not relax fully. He sat with his back against a broken wall, his weapon resting across his lap. The silence stretched long, heavy, yet the feeling of being hunted never left. Then he heard it again, a soft scrape of stone. So small, almost like the sound of a mouse running across the floor. But he knew better. The stalker was close. He raised his weapon and called into the night, "Come out." For a moment, nothing moved. Then, from the corner of his eye, he caught it. A quick flash of light, two faintly glowing eyes in the shadows. His breath slowed, his finger ready on the trigger. But before he could fire, the eyes disappeared again. The stalker had vanished like smoke. His mind raced. The glowing eyes were too small for a beast, too sharp for a child. Whoever or whatever was following him had skill. Skill to track, to hide, to wait. He muttered, "You're good, but not good enough forever." The night deepened. The soldier did not sleep. He knew sleep would invite death. Instead, he listened carefully to every whisper of wind, every shift of rubble, every breath that was not his own. And then, it happened. A shadow moved across the fire's faint glow. Silent, graceful, almost invisible. But the soldier's sharp eyes caught it. He stood quickly, weapon raised, heart racing. The stalker froze for half a second before melting back into the dark. He followed, slow and careful, through broken streets, past walls marked with old battle scars. The stalker was leading him deeper into the ruins. Or maybe it was testing him. The soldier's every step grew heavier with suspicion. Yet his curiosity burned stronger than his fear. At last, he stopped in the middle of the street. His voice rang clear in the empty night. "Why are you following me?" His words echoed against the ruined stone. The city gave no answer, but the silence felt alive. Somewhere in the shadows, the stalker was listening. Somewhere, unseen eyes studied him. Somewhere, something small and dangerous waited. The soldier tightened his grip on the weapon. He whispered under his breath, "You can hide all night if you want, but sooner or later, I'll see you." The night swallowed his words. The hunt was not over. It had only begun. The night stretched long, and the soldier never lowered his guard. He sat by the cold ashes of the fire, his eyes never leaving the dark corners of the ruins. Somewhere out there, the glowing eyes still waited, still watched. Whoever the stalker was, they were skilled, patient, and determined. Hours passed, But the soldier was no stranger to waiting. He had spent nights in trenches, days in the wilderness, weeks behind enemy lines. Silence was not his enemy. He could live with it. But what made his skin crawl was the thought that someone was using silence better than him. Finally, as dawn began to touch the horizon with pale light, the soldier caught sight of her. A figure, small, no taller than his chest, crouched on the edge of a shattered wall. She was still as stone, yet her glowing eyes followed every movement he made. Her body was thin, almost too thin, wrapped in dark cloth that blended with the shadows. He blinked once, and she was gone. His jaw tightened, but he whispered, "So, you're real after all." He decided not to chase her this time. Instead, he began moving slowly through the ruins, pretending to ignore the feeling of being followed. But every few steps, he tested her. He would turn a sharp corner suddenly, only to catch a glimpse of her darting behind rubble. He would stop without warning, and hear the faint scrape of her feet freezing in place. It was a game of shadows, but now he was certain. His stalker was no beast, no soldier, no machine. It was a child, or something very close to one. By midday, the ruined city was quiet under the heat. The soldier entered what had once been a marketplace, now filled with broken stalls and blackened stones. He walked between the wreckage, then suddenly spun. This time, his speed was enough. His eyes locked on her. She froze, halfway between two broken pillars. For the first time, he saw her clearly in the light. She was young, alien yet strangely familiar. Her skin was pale with faint blue markings across her face and arms. Her hair was dark, tied back with strips of cloth. And her glowing eyes, sharp, intelligent, unblinking, watched him like a hunter watches prey. But what struck him most was her size. She was tiny, fragile-looking, her thin frame wrapped in torn fabric. Yet she carried herself with the balance and silence of a trained scout. A tiny tracker, built for stealth. The soldier didn't lift his weapon this time. Instead, he held up his empty hand, palm open. "You've been following me all night," he said slowly. Her head tilted, just slightly, as if she was studying his voice. But she didn't move closer. For a long moment, they stood there, the soldier and the tiny tracker, caught in a silent standoff. Finally, she moved, slow, careful. From her belt, she pulled out a small device, glowing faintly with the same strange light in her eyes. She held it up, not like a weapon, but like an offering. The soldier frowned, lowering his weapon a little. "What's that?" he asked, though he knew she might not understand. Her lips moved, soft words slipping out in a strange, broken accent. "Track, you, me follow." The words were enough. She was not just stalking him for fun. She had been ordered to. But why? And by who? The soldier stepped closer, just one step. Immediately, she stepped back, clutching the device to her chest. Her eyes widened, not with fear, but with warning. Like she was telling him silently not to come too close. He stopped, respecting the space. "You're just a kid," he muttered under his breath. But the way she stood, the way she held herself, there was nothing childish about her. She was young, yes, but dangerous. Her small body was a mask for her sharp instincts. Suddenly, she surprised him. She pressed the device to the ground, and in a flash, it projected a faint map of the ruins. His position glowed bright red, surrounded by several other marks. The soldier's heart skipped. Those marks, they were patrol routes, hunting paths. Someone else had been watching him through her tracker. She looked at him then, for the first time not as prey. Her glowing eyes softened, her small shoulders dropping. She spoke again, broken but clear enough. "No, I not give. I not betray." And with those words, she pushed the device toward him, as if giving it up. The soldier stared at her. Why would she risk herself to hand this over? What did she want in return? For the first time, suspicion and curiosity fought inside him. Maybe she wasn't just a tracker. Maybe she was something more. The sun dipped low again, shadows stretching long. The ruins fell quiet once more. But now the soldier was no longer alone. The tiny tracker had shown herself. And whether he wanted it or not, their paths were now tied together. The soldier stood frozen in the ruins, staring at the tiny tracker who had just pushed the glowing device toward him. She was small, fragile-looking, but her sharp eyes burned with strange determination. He did not lower his guard completely, but he no longer aimed his weapon at her. Something in her actions told him she was not here to kill. The device still glowed faintly between them, its map showing red marks moving across the city. Other hunters, other patrols, searching, watching, closing in. The soldier realized the truth. She had been used to lead them to him. But instead of betraying him, she was warning him. Slowly, carefully, he crouched down and picked up the device. Her eyes followed every movement, her small hands tightening on the cloth around her arms. For a moment, he thought she might run, but she didn't. She stayed, breathing fast but standing her ground. The soldier studied the device, turning it in his hand. "Why give this to me?" he asked, his voice low and steady. She tilted her head, struggling with words. "Bond, no betray," she whispered. Her voice was soft, broken, but her meaning was clear. The soldier frowned, not fully understanding. Bond? Did she mean loyalty? A promise? Or something deeper? He watched her small frame in the dying light, her eyes glowing like tiny stars. She didn't look like an enemy, but she didn't look like a helpless child either. There was something hidden in her, something he couldn't name yet. He stood slowly, slipping the device into his belt. She flinched as he moved, but didn't flee. Instead, she raised her small hand halfway, as if testing him. The soldier hesitated, then lifted his own hand, palm open. For the first time, their eyes met not as hunter and prey, but as two beings searching for trust. The silence between them was heavy, filled with tension. Every ruined wall, every broken stone seemed to listen. Finally, she stepped forward, just one step. Her bare feet barely made a sound on the dust. She stopped only a few paces from him, small and fragile against his tall frame. Her voice came again, trembling but steady. "You are strong, they fear. I choose." The soldier blinked, confused. She chose? Chose what? Him? Why? Before he could ask, she moved again. From a pouch at her side, she pulled a shard of crystal glowing faintly blue. She held it with both hands, then pressed it against her chest. Her eyes never left his. "This, Bond," she whispered, "dark, Bond." He felt his breath catch in his throat. Her kind had rituals, traditions he didn't understand. But from the way she offered the crystal, from the way her voice shook, he knew it was sacred. Not a trap, not a trick. Something more personal, something dangerous for her to give. He didn't take it. Not yet. Instead, he lowered himself to her height, kneeling so they were face to face. Her eyes widened, glowing softly in the shadows. She looked ready to bolt, yet she didn't. "Why me?" he asked quietly. Her answer came simple, broken, but strong. "Others, cruel, you different." The words hit him harder than he expected. Somewhere deep inside, he realized she had been watching not just his movements, but his choices. She had studied the way he walked, the way he carried himself. And in him, she had seen something worth trusting. But trust was not so simple. The soldier had fought in too many wars to give it freely. He studied her again, her small size, her quiet strength, her strange determination. If she was lying, it would cost him his life. If she was telling the truth, it might cost her everything. The silence stretched again, broken only by the distant sound of rubble shifting in the wind. Then, without warning, a sharp noise echoed across the street. The soldier spun, weapon raised. But the girl darted forward faster than he expected. She grabbed his wrist, pulling him back into the shadow of the wall. Her voice hissed softly, urgent. "Hunters." And she was right. From the broken road ahead, 3 alien figures appeared, tall and armored, their movements sharp. They carried weapons unlike anything he had seen, glowing faintly with energy. They scanned the ruins carefully, their eyes searching for any trace. The soldier held his breath, his body tense. But beside him, the tiny tracker pressed her small hand against the crystal again, whispering softly to herself. A prayer, or a vow? The hunters passed slowly, their voices harsh and metallic. One of them stopped, turning his head in their direction. The soldier tightened his grip on the weapon, ready to fight. But the girl squeezed his wrist, shaking her head. Not now, she whispered, her eyes glowing brighter in the dark. When the hunters finally moved away, the soldier let out a slow breath. He looked at her again, this strange small stalker who had chosen him. She had risked her life to protect him. And now she offered him a bond he didn't understand. For the first time since he entered the ruined city, the soldier felt the weight of choice pressing on him. This was no longer a simple mission, no longer just survival. It was the beginning of something larger, something he had never imagined. The tiny tracker had revealed herself, and she had offered more than trust. She had offered a bond in the dark. The ruins had grown silent again after the hunters passed. The soldier and the tiny tracker stayed hidden in the shadow of the broken wall until the sound of boots faded into nothing. Only then did the girl release his wrist, her small hand trembling slightly, though her face remained firm. She looked at him with glowing eyes that seemed far too old for her small frame. The soldier studied her carefully. This was no ordinary child, no common scout. There was purpose in her actions, secrets in her words. And the crystal she clutched so tightly seemed to hold more meaning than he could yet understand. He broke the silence first, his voice low but steady. You risked yourself, he said. You could have led them straight to me, but you didn't. Her head tilted, and her lips moved with slow, broken words. Not betray, bond. That word again. Bond. The soldier frowned, the sound rolling in his mind. He had fought on worlds where bonds meant contracts, on others where bonds meant chains. But when she said it, the word felt heavier, sacred, as though her life hung upon it. She stepped closer, her bare feet silent on the cracked stone. The crystal shard glowed faintly in her hands as she pressed it to her chest once more. Her voice trembled, but her eyes never wavered. My people, bond in dark, life to life. The soldier stiffened. She was not speaking of a simple promise. Her culture had rituals, ancient ones, binding ones. And from the way she looked at him, she had already chosen. He shook his head, his voice hard. You don't even know me. But she answered without hesitation, her words sharp and certain despite their broken form. Watch long. Know enough, you not cruel. The soldier's chest tightened. All those hours she had stalked him silently, she had been watching, judging, deciding. And now, in the heart of the ruins, she offered him a bond that could not be undone. He was a soldier of earth, trained to survive, trained to fight. But this was different. This was not survival, it was trust. Her hands trembled as she held the crystal toward him. Her voice softened, carrying both fear and hope. If you refuse, I break. I die. His eyes widened. Was she telling the truth? Could rejection really mean her death? The glow in her eyes told him it was not a lie. This was not a child's game. This was her life. He looked away, his mind racing. He had seen desperate refugees cling to soldiers before. He had seen slaves beg for chains to be broken. But this was something else. Something deeper, older, and unshakable. She stepped closer again, her small shadow falling across his chest. Her voice was barely more than a whisper. You strong. I choose. And with those words, she pressed the crystal against his armor. The soldier froze, feeling a strange warmth pulse from the shard. The glow spread faintly, like light seeping through cracks. For a moment, he thought it was just a trick of his eyes. But then he felt it. Something deep, something pulling at him. Not pain, not fear, connection. He gritted his teeth, grabbing her wrist, pulling the crystal away. The glow faded instantly, and her body shivered as though she had been cut open. She looked at him with wide, desperate eyes. Her voice cracked. If you not, I alone, forever. The soldier's hand tightened around her wrist. He should have walked away, should have left her to her people's strange traditions. But he couldn't. Not when he saw the fear hidden under her brave face. Not when he felt the weight of what she was willing to risk. "Why me?" he asked again, his voice breaking. This time her answer was simple, without hesitation. "You fight, but you protect." The words struck deep. She had seen in him something no one else had. And though he could not fully understand her bond, he understood one thing. She was asking him to be more than a soldier. She was asking him to be her shield, her partner, her only hope. The ruins groaned with the sound of shifting stone. Somewhere in the distance, the hunters were still searching. The soldier knew they had little time. He loosened his grip on her wrist and let out a long breath. "All right," he whispered, "if I accept, what happens?" Her eyes brightened with sudden fire. She raised the crystal again, pressing it to her chest. "Bond in dark, bind life to life, never break." Her voice shook, but there was pride in it. She was ready to give him everything, even if it cost her. The soldier hesitated. War had taught him never to trust easily, but war had also taught him something else. Sometimes, trust was the only way to survive. He reached out, slowly, carefully. His fingers brushed the edge of the glowing shard. A pulse of warmth shot through his hand, crawling up his arm. The girl gasped, her small body shivering as the light spread between them. It was as if the ruins themselves held their breath. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then the glow faded, leaving only silence. Her eyes blinked, wide and wet, but she smiled, small, fragile, but real. "Now, bond," she whispered. The soldier let out a heavy breath. He didn't know what he had just agreed to, but he knew one thing for certain. The tiny tracker was no longer just a shadow in the ruins. She was tied to him now, hidden by the bond. And in that bond, their fates had become one. The bond had been sealed, though the soldier barely understood what it meant. All he knew was that the tiny tracker no longer followed him from the shadows. Now she stood beside him, her glowing eyes calm yet alert. Her fragile frame carried the weight of a decision that had tied their lives together. But their moment of silence didn't last. From the far side of the ruins, the sound of boots echoed again. The hunters were back, their patrols closing in. The device he had taken from the girl still glowed faintly, showing their movements like red marks creeping closer. The girl stiffened, her hand tightening around his arm. Her voice came low and urgent. "They come, must run." The soldier nodded, his instincts agreeing with her. He had faced ambushes before, but here the numbers were against him. With the hunters tracking, fighting meant death. Survival meant shadows, speed, and silence. They moved quickly through the broken streets. The girl led the way now, her small feet darting across rubble without sound. She was like smoke, slipping through cracks, sliding under collapsed beams. The soldier followed, heavier, slower, but keeping close. Together they wove through the ruins like shadows fleeing the light. Behind them, the hunters spread out, their weapons glowing faintly in the dark. Their voices cut through the silence, harsh and commanding. They were searching, sweeping the ruins with precision. Every second the gap closed. The girl motioned sharply with her hand, guiding him into a collapsed building. They crouched low behind a broken wall as two hunters passed by, their boots crunching on the stone. The soldier's grip on his weapon tightened, but the girl pressed her small hand against his. Her glowing eyes shook as she whispered, "No fight, wait." Her wisdom proved right. The hunters moved on, unaware of how close they had been. Only when their shadows disappeared did the girl tug him forward again. Through the cracks, through the dust, through the endless maze of ruins. The soldier realized now why she had been chosen as a tracker. She knew how to move unseen, how to breathe without sound, how to vanish like mist. Without her, he would have already been caught. But with her, he slipped through the city like a ghost. Hours passed in a blur of hiding and running. The hunters never gave up. They circled, they searched, they shouted to each other in a language filled with anger. The ruins became a hunting ground, and he and the girl were the prey. At one point, a hunter appeared suddenly at the end of the alley. The soldier raised his weapon, ready to fire. But before he could, the girl darted forward, tossing a shard of stone into the shadows. The hunter spun toward the noise, firing into the wrong direction. The soldier seized the chance, pulling her close and rushing into the opposite street. Her tiny body pressed against his side as they vanished again into the dark. "Smart," he whispered to her once they stopped to breathe. She only looked up with faint pride, her glowing eyes soft. "Bond, protect each other," she said, her words heavy with meaning. The soldier almost smiled, but the sound of pursuit returned. No time for warmth, only survival. By nightfall, the ruins had become a maze of shadows. The hunters lit strange flares, burning blue and green, painting the broken city in alien colors. Their silhouettes moved across walls, their voices grew closer. Every light made hiding harder, every step more dangerous. The soldier and the girl slipped into an underground tunnel. The air was damp, filled with the smell of mold and water. Their footsteps echoed faintly as they crept deeper. The girl led with sure movements, as though she had walked these tunnels before. But the hunters were clever too. One of the flares rolled into the tunnel, spilling blue light. Their shadows stretched long on the walls. The soldier grabbed the girl and pressed her against the stone, holding his breath. The hunter's footsteps entered, slow and steady. The glow of their weapons pierced the dark. The girl's tiny hand slipped into his, trembling but firm. Her eyes met his, silently asking him to trust her. And for the first time, he realized something strange. The bond they had made was not just ritual. He could feel her heartbeat in his chest, feel her fear as though it were his own. It was not illusion. It was real. The hunters drew closer. The soldier knew they couldn't hide much longer. He tightened his grip on his weapon, ready for blood. But then the girl whispered one word. "Wait." She reached into her pouch and pulled out a small stone coated with faint glowing dust. She tossed it far down the tunnel, the glow bouncing and rolling into the darkness. The hunters turned instantly, chasing the false light with sharp cries. The sound of their boots faded into the deeper tunnels. The girl exhaled softly, her body trembling with exhaustion. The soldier looked at her in awe. Small, fragile, but clever enough to outsmart warriors 3 times her size. When silence returned, they moved again. Step by step, shadow by shadow, until at last they emerged from the tunnel into the open night. The stars hung above them, cold and distant. The soldier dropped to one knee, breathing hard. Beside him, the girl sat down, clutching the crystal against her chest. She whispered again, almost like a prayer. "Bond strong, we live." The soldier stared at her, his chest heavy with new understanding. This tiny tracker had once stalked him silently. But now, in the shadows of the hunt, she had become his partner. And though the chase was far from over, he knew one truth. He could not abandon her now, not when their lives were tied together. The ruins had grown quiet again, but the soldier knew silence did not mean safety. The hunters were still out there, searching, circling, never giving up. He and the tiny tracker had escaped through the tunnels, but night had fallen heavy and cold. The stars above watched like silent witnesses as they found shelter in a half-buried cave on the edge of the city. Inside, the air was damp and still. The soldier set down his pack, scanning the cave's walls for weakness. It would do for now, hidden from patrols, dark enough to hide their fireless rest. The girl sat across from him, clutching the glowing crystal close to her chest. Her small frame was shivering, but her eyes never looked away from him. He studied her in the dim light. So tiny, so fragile, yet she carried herself with strange dignity. She had risked herself again and again, guiding him through danger, saving him with clever tricks. But now she sat in silence, waiting, as though holding back something heavier than fear. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. "You saved me today." Her lips parted slightly, and she whispered back. "Bond saved, not me." That word again. Bond. It carried weight in her voice, a depth he could no longer ignore. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. What does it mean? This bond of yours? She hesitated, her small hands tightening around the crystal. Her voice trembled as she answered. My people, bond in dark, one life to another. No break, no betray. Her glowing eyes softened, but her words were heavy. Without bond, I fade. With bond, I live. The soldier's chest tightened. He understood now. Her life was tied to his acceptance. When she had pressed the crystal against him, she had given herself completely. And if he turned away, if he rejected her, she would die. He shook his head slowly. Why me? Out of everyone, why choose a stranger? Her reply came without hesitation. Others cruel, they use, they break, you fight, but you protect. Her words hit him harder than any bullet could. She had seen something in him that he didn't even see in himself anymore. War had turned him cold, hardened him. Yet this small alien child had chosen him not for his strength, but for his heart. She crawled closer across the cave floor, her bare feet silent. The crystal glowed brighter as she held it out again. Her voice was quiet, but it did not shake this time. Night of bond, must finish, you accept, truly, then bond strong. The soldier stared at her. He felt the weight of the choice pressing down on him. If he accepted, his life would no longer be his alone. If he refused, she would die in this cave tonight. And though he had survived countless battles, he could not bring himself to let her fade. He reached out slowly, his hand steady despite the storm in his chest. His fingers touched the crystal, warm and alive. The glow spread instantly, crawling up his arm, wrapping around them both like threads of light. The girl gasped softly, her eyes widening as the bond deepened. Her small frame trembled, but she did not pull away. The cave filled with a faint hum. The soldier felt it inside his chest, like two heartbeats becoming one. His breath caught as images flickered in his mind. Not his memories, but hers. Moments of her childhood in broken villages, her people forcing bonds, her fear of rejection. And then the moment she had first seen him, walking strong through the ruins. She had chosen him then, long before she revealed herself. The soldier staggered back, overwhelmed. But she reached for his hand, her small fingers gripping his tightly. Not fear, she whispered. Bond not chain, bond is trust. Her words steadied him. He realized the bond was not control, not slavery, not weakness. It was a joining, a vow, a promise deeper than words. He took a long breath, his eyes locking with hers. I accept, he said firmly. The light flared one last time, then sank into silence. The girl slumped forward, her head resting lightly against his chest. Her breathing slowed, steady and calm. Her glowing eyes dimmed to a soft shine as she whispered, now, not alone. The soldier held her small frame carefully. For the first time in years, he felt something beyond survival. He felt connection, fragile but unbreakable. The cave was still, the night outside restless. But within these walls, two lives had been bound together. The bond was complete. And though he did not know what the future would bring, he knew one truth with certainty. He could not abandon her. Not now, not ever. The cave was quiet, the bond sealed. The soldier sat against the cold stone, the tiny tracker resting beside him, her small body curled lightly against his chest. Her breathing was calm now, steady, as if the bond had given her a new strength. But outside the cave, the ruins still stirred with danger. The hunters had not stopped their search. He could hear their distant voices, harsh and metallic, echoing across the broken streets. Their lights flashed against ruined walls, their weapons humming faintly in the night. They would not leave until they found what they were hunting. The soldier tightened his grip on his weapon. For the first time in his long life of battles, he wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for her too. The bond tied their fates together, and failure now meant death for both. The girl stirred, her glowing eyes opening softly. She looked up at him, her small face tired but determined. Hunters, still close, she whispered. He nodded, his voice firm. Then we move together. They slipped out of the cave in silence. The moonlight painted the ruins silver, long shadows stretching across the broken streets. The girl led with her silent steps, slipping through cracks and fallen stone. The soldier followed, heavier but careful, always keeping her within reach. They were no longer hunter and prey, no longer stalker and stranger. They were partners now, bound in the dark. And the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath as they moved. Soon, the hunters appeared again, their tall forms cutting across the moonlit streets. They spread out, scanning the ground, their weapons glowing. The girl grabbed his hand, pulling him into the cover of a collapsed archway. Her eyes glowed faintly as she whispered, "Bond strong now, we fight if we must." The soldier met her gaze. He felt her courage through the bond, like fire spreading into his own chest. He realized it was more than trust. It was connection. Her heartbeat, her fear, her strength, they flowed into him. And in return, she drew from his calm, his discipline, his resolve. The hunters came closer. One of them stepped only a few meters away, scanning the shadows. The soldier raised his weapon slowly, but the girl touched his arm, shaking her head. "Not yet," she whispered. They waited, breathless, until the hunters moved past. Then, with a sudden cry, one of the hunters spotted movement. "Here!" the alien voice roared. In an instant, blue light filled the street, and the chase began again. The soldier and the girl ran, their steps pounding against the stone. The hunters followed, their shouts echoing like thunder. But this time, they were not running alone. Every step, every breath, every choice, they moved as one. The girl darted left, the soldier followed. She slipped through a crack in the wall, he covered her from behind, firing a burst of shots that forced the hunters back. She tossed a shard of glowing dust to blind their pursuers. He dragged a broken beam down to block the path behind them. Together, they wove through the city like shadows that could not be caught. But the hunters were relentless. At last, they cornered the pair in the old market square. Tall walls on all sides, no tunnels, no escape. The hunters advanced slowly, their weapons raised, their voices sharp. "Give the tracker to us, and we will let you live." The soldier stepped in front of the girl, his weapon steady. His voice rang out clear in the night. "No!" The hunters laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the ruins. "You would die for her? She is nothing, a failed bond, a useless shadow." The soldier's jaw tightened. He looked back at the girl, her glowing eyes filled with fear but also hope. Then he faced the hunters again, his voice hard. "She is not nothing. She is mine to protect." The hunters roared and attacked. Blasts of light tore through the air, shaking the square. The soldier fired back, his shots precise and deadly. The girl moved like smoke, darting around the edges, throwing dust and shards to confuse their enemies. Together, they fought, not as man and child, but as one. The battle raged until the last hunter fell, collapsing in a flash of blue fire. Silence returned to the ruins, broken only by the soldier's heavy breathing. He lowered his weapon slowly, his body trembling with exhaustion. Beside him, the girl leaned against his side, her small chest rising and falling quickly. They had survived. Not because of his strength alone, not because of her tricks, but because of their bond. It had made them more than they were apart. The girl pressed the crystal against her chest, its glow faint but steady. Her voice came soft, but filled with pride. "Now, together in dark." The soldier looked at her, this tiny tracker who had once stalked him silently. Now she stood beside him, her bond sealed, her courage unshaken. He realized the galaxy would never understand what had begun here tonight. A human and a fragile alien child, bound together by trust, loyalty, and survival. But he knew one thing for certain. They were no longer alone. Together in the dark, they would face whatever came next.